start the recording here as we jump right into our pricing workshop. So just a quick introduction. My name is Isabel. I am the community manager at Beacons. If you are a Beacons user, you might have seen me around in the Beacons community. And we are incredibly lucky to have Cynthia Ruff here. She also happens to be a Beacons community member, which is how she and I connected. She is also the founder of an incredible company called #PayMe, where she is on a mission to bring transparency and knowledge and empowerment to the creator industry so that you guys can all learn about how to get paid and how to set your pricing and your rates. So I will let you, Cynthia, introduce yourself a little bit as well.
Yeah, absolutely, Isabel. I'm really grateful that you guys were interested in learning a little bit, and I could help share any information that will help you guys grow your business. As she said, I'm Cynthia Ruff. I am a Beacons community member. I remember finding Beacons like almost maybe 2 years ago, and I was like, oh, what a great concept. Like, I have to go join this right now. What a cool link in bio tool. And now you guys have really grown into something so much more than just that. And yeah, I'm a creator myself. So I started blogging in 2014 just for fun, and was able to leave my full-time job where I spent a lot of time in compensation consulting, so pricing jobs behind the scenes in the corporate world, to become a creator full-time, which in 2018 was much more the Wild West than it is now. So it was very scary back then, and it's still very scary now. So if you want to make the jump, don't worry, it doesn't get any less scary as we've gotten further into the future with even more tools. And during that time, I was just never able to really scale my business for myself. I had to have a talent manager to do that for me, but they wouldn't look at me because I only had 20,000 Instagram followers at the time. And, I was thinking, not fair. I have 500,000 blog readers per year, and I make 6 figures, and I've been supporting myself and trying to grow my team. So why am I getting passed up for this opportunity? I decided to go back to get my master's. And during that time, in school, I was in a design thinking class where I was able to hone in on a problem that I saw in the creator economy, which was this lack of ability to price work with some sort of data behind it. Because in the corporate world, we have like all these beautiful data sets that we get to pull from to help price our CEOs and other executive salaries to make sure that we're compensating them fairly. However, in my day-to-day practice from a creator, I was still, 6 years in, and I was like, where the heck do I start pricing things? Like, am I overpricing? Am I underpricing? Am I going to lose the work because of this? I don't know. And so, yeah, that was kind of what started me on the journey in February 2020. And here we are today with a tool that gets pretty damn close to what the market says you should get paid for work. We do like to say that there's still a little bit of art left to the science that we provide for pricing. And we're really excited. My co-founder is the techie side, and he's building out another part of the tool that will really help creators become their own agent, which is launching soon. And we just can't wait to help creators grow their business, grow their revenue, and really take ownership of their brand new funnel without a talent manager. That's so important as you guys want to expand your businesses. So happy to be a resource, and please ask all questions. And if I didn't explain anything enough, or if I just have a coughing fit and have to go on mute for a second, I did get a cold over the weekend. Bear with me. I promise I'm going to get to everyone's questions as we go through this.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that overview. And yeah, just having worked, I worked at a different creator company before I came to Beacons, and pricing, it's the number one question all along the way, like no matter what stage of your creator journey you're at, if you're just starting out brand new, or if you've been at it for a while, it seems to be the questions around pricing and payments are top of mind for everybody. So we will jump right in, and we had everybody pre-submit questions through the registration, and people put in some really great ones. And we have grouped them together into sort of broad categories and things people asked that were similar. So we're going to start with just like, what are some general best practices, or a high level overview on how do you set pricing? What is it based on? Are you taking into account, your following, your engagement, what they're asking for? Like, let's just kind of start there.
Yeah. At the end of the day, all brand marketers kind of look at the followership as kind of like a guiding light to your followership and your reach for like the guiding light of how to set prices, right? So you can look at your total community impact and start there. But you have to also think about the skills that you bring to the table as well. So like the years of experience you've spent honing your craft also account for how you can price your work and the niche in which you operate into. There are a lot of niches that are much more saturated. So if you are trying to be a fashion blogger and you have 20,000 followers, you're probably not going to make as much as a fashion blogger who has $2 million because that niche is really saturated. Another thing to look at is like, if you are the big fish in a small niche, you have that authority to increase your rates. And before you could pay for verification, if you are a verified creator, you do get a little bit of like an upswing in how you can price. That doesn't mean that like now paying for verification is bad. It's just saying that you're going to have to differentiate how you communicate that verification. So have you been featured in news outlets? Do you have other awards or outstanding accolades that you can add to your credibility, your resume that will help communicate that value to a brand?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it's great that you mentioned, the changes and people paying for verifications now. One of the reasons this is a challenging topic is that it's a moving target. Things are always evolving and always changing throughout the industry. And so knowing like how to keep up with that can definitely be a challenge. So a few more questions that came in under this kind of like, I'm new to this, I'm just getting started, I've never charged for content before. What if I don't really have any experience? How do I know how much my rate should be? Is it based on skill or analytics? Was a question that was also submitted in sort of that realm.
Yeah, shameless plug. You guys are welcome to use our free base rate calculator anytime to get a starting point on where to price. So what our base rate calculator says is like, we strip out all the details of a paid campaign and just say at minimum, here's what followers like you are pricing in the market right now for certain campaigns. If you just want to go like a general route, the industry standard is taking your number of followers and dividing by 1,000 times 1+ your engagement rate. I don't like this because it doesn't account for your skill, being able to have like that differentiator to you as well. And otherwise you could just also do an hourly rate. So you could look at freelance photographer rates in your area and see how much they're charging, photographer or videographer, depending on how you categorize your content. And do it by just an hourly rate, saying like, oh, this is going to take, 2 hours of my time from like shooting and editing perspective. So I'll charge you 2 hours, the market hourly rate in my area, that's $75. Great. Now I've just made $150. So those are all very valid ways to justify your starting rate.
Yeah, let us know in the chat, y'all, if you've ever charged hourly or even considered charging hourly, or if that's something that's totally new to you, because I don't think it's something that comes to mind for many creators, but it can be, as you say, such a great way to get started. So what, in addition to pricing, sort of the other side of that is contracts. And we did say we would talk a little bit about contracts. So one of these kind of, I'm new to this questions was, I just don't have any idea how to negotiate a contract, or if the rate that a brand is offering me in a contract is a good idea. Where do I start? And maybe you can start with the base rate calculator. Is a good place.
Yeah. Negotiating contracts is like a whole extra 30-minute conversation, which we did do a masterclass last week. And if you didn't join for that, be happy to send you the link so that you guys can recap it on our unlisted YouTube channel. But otherwise, at the end of the day, you just have to understand what a brand is using your content for, how long they plan on using it. And then essentially the breadth and the depth in which they plan on using that content. And do you feel okay with that? Right. So they try to hide a lot of very simple things and very scary legal talk. And it's really important to not just skim over the scope of services and the scope of work, because those indemnification clauses could potentially get you in the future if you go out of bounds of the campaign, but do give it a good skim to make sure that you're good with when they're paying you. I think that's something that a lot of people overlook is, you're doing the work right now, but they say that they're going to pay you in net 20. Well, what does that mean? That means I'm paying you technically in 4 months, because it's 120 days from the day in which you do the work. I don't like that. That's very high. That's super risky. Suppose that company like Silicon Valley Bank just goes out of business one day, and contractors are the last ones to get paid from a debtor perspective. And you as a creator as a debtor. So I always negotiate down to 15 days after the work is done. Essentially everything in a contract is negotiable. Anything in a campaign is negotiable. If they can't meet you at the rate, can they pay you sooner? Can they take out some of the things in the contract that you don't want to do? Like maybe they want you to do 2 posts and you're like, I want to do a 1 and done. You can't meet me at my rate. This is what it is. And all those things are conversation points. So never start with your final ask first. Always start with, you know, a little bit of tweaking here and there to kind of get to that final thing. So if you say, you know, you're going to meet in the middle. So, you know, you're trying to work backwards from both ways. And the other side also knows this as well.
Yes, that's such an amazing point to get creative with your negotiation. And if they're not meeting your rate, to think about, you know, what other terms you might want to negotiate on, because that's a great way to achieve flexibility and like a better deal for yourself.
And they always change the contract from the terms in which you guys have discussed in email. I know sometimes people will come back and say, an email is a legally binding amendment to the contract. I don't care. Save your skin and just have them update the contract before you start any work, because that's the safest way to protect you and protect your asset going forward, because people who work in brand management roles do flow through these pretty frequently. So if they leave, that email trail is gone with them leaving the company too.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think all of us have become pretty conditioned to like sign things or check acknowledgement boxes without really reading it or paying attention to what we're signing. If you take one thing away from contract conversations, I think it should be, don't ever sign anything you didn't read every single word of it. And that's long and tedious and boring. And if you don't want to do it, you can pay somebody else to do it, as long as you're sure they have your best interest in mind. But that's just like, you know, tell us in the chat, let us know, like, own it. Have you ever signed a contract with a brand that you didn't actually read every single word of it? You know, we've been there and we don't recommend it. So.
Exactly. Learn from us. Don't do it.
All right. So how do I keep my prices as high as possible without losing out on brand deals? So I think that question is kind of like, how do I find my personal sweet spot where I'm maximizing what I can earn without turning people off?
I am, from a personal perspective, I have such a wide range of prices that I use for brands, because I know the willingness to pay for everyone is slightly different. So different brand sizes are going to have different budgets, and it's not saying that you yourself as a creator aren't worth X amount of dollars. It's just saying that at this time that they can't pay you that kind of rate. So for me, because I've been working in this industry for almost a decade now, I've kind of gotten used to the swings of how my niche operates in terms of where the dollars flow through in a calendar year, and when I can expect to upcharge and when I can expect to just kind of take the rate that they give me and like maybe put a little bit of a premium on it for other things they're asking for. So my rates fluctuate anytime during the year from $450 to $6,000 per campaign. And that really just depends on, you know, who's hiring me. Is it a charity? What's the level of work that has to be done? You know, all these other factors that go into it. So I would say be flexible and be open to negotiating with them, because I would say anyone who wants to have a partnership with you, they want to pay you and compensate you for your time. So if they're opening up that door for paying you, be willing to listen to what they think is their max rate for this type of deliverable based off of your creator perspective. And if it's not a brand that's aligned with your values or aligned anywhere near what you want to charge, you can obviously say no. And that's just going to be like a hard part of the business, right? Like, is it worth you doing all of these little like nitty gritty things with the campaign for the lack of dollars that they're going to pay you?
Yeah. And going off of that question, I think one that relates to it is, should I publish my rates? You know, it's an option on a website or a media kit to say, you know, typically this is what I charge or this is my range. Is that smart at any point in your career journey, or is it a negative?
It's a personal philosophy question. I'm very anti sending rate cards over for like every single type of campaign, just because my prices fluctuate so much throughout the year. And I've seen it both ways, right? So like I have a friend, she publishes her rates on her website and she's like, I don't even want an email from you unless you're gonna pay me $3,000. And I'm like, you go get it, like support you fully. I'm just not that type of person. Like I'd rather start that conversation. So however you want to weed out the people who you like are going to send you annoying emails for gifted campaigns if you're not accepting them, that's totally personal preference and what you want to do.
I think it makes sense at different points in your journey. Maybe if you're just getting started, if you find that people are not reaching out to you or you're not getting those conversations started, maybe there's something to learn kind of from trying it one way and then trying it another way.
Exactly. Yeah.
Should my prices be different if a brand comes to me versus me pitching them?
I'm gonna go with no on this one. That's again another personal preference. So I've heard some things and it's like, well, if it's a dream brand, maybe they'll price you like mostly creators will price it lower. I'm like, if it's a dream brand and they came up to me, want to pay me money, like I'm gonna charge my rate. So that's what I want to, that's what I would do. Again, it's about like opening that conversation and letting them pitch their price and is it even in the conversation starter for you. So how bad do you want to work with them? Are they going to align with your content values and all these other things? Because you should be actively pitching, not like 10 pitches a day, because I saw that advice somewhere floating around on TikTok and I was like, these people are insane. Don't send 10 pitches a day. Send 10 really well-researched pitches per week, maybe. Like I would even say that's probably too many. And make sure that when you're taking the offensive too, like you're building your sales book like 6 to 8 weeks out. And that's going to be really important for you as well. Not just waiting for those like paid opportunities to come in your door and say, I'm going to charge you more because you came to me. It really just kind of depends on where you are in your sponsorship saturation rate at that time too. So if you want to try to fit one more person in, but you're kind of getting that max for the month, you could upcharge it and be like, okay, you guys came to me, you want this as a quick turn. I'm going to upcharge you because I've already got 4 sponsorships this month. And like adding this 5th one is a bit more of a risk for my audience now. So I am going to upcharge you. So those are conversations that you can have with them in the email to justify that increase in fee too.
Yeah, absolutely. I do just want to address, we had a question in the chat over here. Can you provide examples of different tiers of companies and who charges high to low? Do we need some clarification on that maybe?
I kind of have I'm not sure who asked that, but so we published a report back in January, I think, or early February on like creator, like who pays the best in terms of industry size or company size and everything. So it's actually any high growth company is going to have more money set towards influencer campaigns, right? And what does a high growth company look like? It doesn't look like Amazon because like they're just a massive conglomeration. They're going to be spending billions of dollars a year on marketing. That's just part of like their flow and the way that they have to exist. But these newer companies who all of a sudden you're starting to see a whole bunch of digital ads on every single platform. You're starting to see an uptick in influencer campaigns from either friends or other people when you're going to go research this company itself. And my greatest indication for whether or not it's a high growth company is as soon as you visit the website, your user identification is tracked with that. And then now you are getting hit with ads on every single platform you go to, which means that they put significant digital dollars behind promoting that and like getting you as a customer to be sticky to their product, which means you have an opportunity as a creator to be like, okay, well, my audience already aligns with this product. I can go find their contact. I can go pitch to them and be like, hey, I know that you guys are working on entering XYZ market. Here's why our brands would be perfect for each other. Let's work together. So I would say targeting a high growth company like that is going to be the most profitable opportunity for you and not just looking at company size itself.
That's a great point. Okay. Questions about retainers versus one-off deals, and how you might approach retainer pricing differently than one-off deal negotiations. And I think the way this question is phrased makes me think this person is kind of asking, if I would love to be, you know, in a longer relationship with this company, but they're just offering kind of a one-off deal, you know, how can I approach that, or how can I turn that into a partnership?
Absolutely. So number one, definitely give them a little bit of a discount, but not too much. I would say like 10 to 15% per month is more than fair on that repeat partnership. Number two, because like you think about like when you're pricing your work, you're also thinking about the time it takes for you to go out and source this new opportunity, right? So that's like a 4 to 6 hour endeavor. So what is that that bird in the bush or your bird in your hand or whatever worth to you that you already have this brand in your wheelhouse? So like a 10 to 15% is more than fair for a repeat. Another way to start that conversation is, you know, maybe you're already in the middle of a campaign with them. Things are going great. The content's beautiful. You're giving them teasers. You're getting like really great feedback from your audience. And you start introducing this idea in the middle of that like upswing in the way the content is performing. Be like, this was so great. I've gotten this amazing feedback from my audience. Like drop in DMs from people who sent you things during the campaign and be like, I'm working on these stories throughout the year, like insert like 5 super high FOMO ideas into this follow-up email and be like, this is where I think we could also create a bigger impact for your company as you guys continue to roll out more in this market. And here's how I want to help you. You know, my team already has this content planned and I'd really love to produce this alongside of you. And they'd be like, oh my God, you're making our work so much easier. Like 80% of agencies and brands pick from the same pool of creators because staffing campaigns is so time consuming. It is the most time consuming part of their job. Just to think about like these people have to go on hundreds of interviews every single time they went to go staff a campaign. And anytime you can save them work for the campaign staffing period, they're going to be like, yes, sign me up for like repeat of this really great outcome with this opportunity. Even if the outcome isn't that great, I would say, look, the content was really beautiful. Like I would highlight the goods and then talk about the bads too and be like, maybe the day was bad. The TikTok ban was happening on the news. And like, I know our day that we were going to promote was supposed to be really good, but it just really flopped. When I did the teaser, it was much better than the sponsored post, blah, blah, blah. Like talk about those failures in a constructive way where you could say like, if we repeat this again, here's what I'm going to do differently too. So it's not bad to talk about the way that the post failed because sometimes they just bomb, right? It happens. But being able to talk about it in an intelligent way and like how you can fix that problem for the next time shows that you're invested as a partner as well.
I love that point because it happens to everybody. Like something just doesn't perform the way that you think it's going to. So like using data and insights, that was a question that was submitted along the way here is what role does data play in the negotiation process? And how can we improve that? You know, if we're looking at using data, and that's, you kind of answered that, right? Like that's one way that you absolutely could use it is to address what didn't go well and show how you would improve for next time.
Yeah, data is like everything. The more assurance you can give a marketer on how the post is performing versus like other insights that you've gained, both qualitative and quantitative. So I run experiments all the time with my social following. My whole Instagram is a social experiment at this point. And I'll like drop bit.ly links in there so I can track from my end of like how many people are clicking and kind of like what that roadmap looks like. I do like market research before I go and pitch brands with my audience about like 6 weeks out. And I'm like, what are you guys working on in your home this year? And they're like kitchen renovation, blah, blah. And I get all this feedback about like what they're doing. And so I can take that to a brand and say, hey, I've got 20 people who are renovating their bathroom this year. Like if you need sinks sold, like let's talk about how these 20 people could be inspired by sinks being sold. So I use every opportunity I can when I go into that initial pitch to have all the qualitative data and all the quantitative data I can to submit. I also, whenever I talk about conversion rates for brand pitches, I make sure that I only pull conversion data from that specific category through my affiliate platform tracking method, whether you guys like to know it, or Amazon Associates or whatever, so that I'm promoting the most relevant data to them. Because Home Depot doesn't care that I worked with a champagne company. Like it's just their data, the metrics are never going to align. So just keep that in mind too when you are sourcing your data for those pitches.
Amazing. Chime in the chat what you guys use for tracking data or if that's something that you would want more support with. We just had a question, what's the best way to source data? I think that it kind of depends on your industry and, what tools you have in place already or what your platforms offer.
Yeah, if you want to track links, of bit.ly, that's bit.ly is a great way for you to just take a little bit of ownership of how many people are clicking in like one dashboard setting. I would say that's a great place to start. Otherwise, your affiliate platforms like to know it or ShopStyle or the Collective Voice now, and Amazon should show you at least like clicks to conversions to items sold and like dollar amount purchased for those types of purchases. So that's a great place to start. And then it's up to your creativity to go deeper and start cutting the data that's more relevant for the brand you're reaching out to.
Yeah, and I'll just plug, actually, Beacons has like a Bitly like feature, which Beacons short links you can track and make short links and clean up your links there. And we definitely would love to see you guys using that.
Yeah, start using Beacons links.
Okay, let's see. Questions about platforms. How does pricing differ on different channels? Are you kind of taking into account, well, I have way more followers on TikTok than on Instagram, but typically followers on Instagram are considered more valuable than followers on TikTok. So how do you take that into account?
Yeah, I would say anytime. So like marketers, there's like two sets of them. There's like super risk adverse ones. They're like, we need to stick with what we know. And then like some of it's like experimental marketing, right? So any of these new platforms like TikTok, like YouTube Shorts, where there hasn't been a real pioneer and the outcome of certain campaigns, like you're going to have to find a very risk averse marketer and be a part of that risk averse budget to even get that conversation started. So as far as pricing goes, I'm going to say like the newer platforms don't typically get priced the way that they should in terms of like equal playing field for Instagram and even like your owned media channels, like newsletters, podcasts, and any sort of website or blog that you have. So those are like, even just relying on a single platform without any sort of other contingent like owned media is a little riskier too. So just thinking about, how you can communicate that you are a good bet. Marketers are looking for good. They're not looking for the best. They just want to say like, if I spend $100 with you, I want to get $100, whether that's an intrinsic or some sort of extrinsic reward. Like, are you going to be good for our brand? Are you going to be good for sales? We can't be good for everything all the time. So you gotta pick which side you cater to. And I just lost my train of thought. What was I saying?
I think
the risk. Yeah, they just want to make sure that you can communicate that you're a good investment, right? So just being able to repeat, like even though this is how like TikTok is playing out right now, here's my plan to make sure that the message still gets in front of the people that need to be reached for this campaign. Showing that you have a plan at least reassures them that they're still spending money on a good investment with their dollars.
And that's a great segue into a question that was asked in the chat here, and one that it was also asked pre-submitted. So the pre-submitted question was, I feel that my rates are fair, but I have a hard time getting brands to pay them. This didn't used to be a problem. It's changed in the last couple of years. What's going on and how do I address it? And then the question that was in the chat here is, I'd love your input on obtaining brand deals as we seem to be drawing closer to a recession. Many creators have had deals fall through because companies are cutting their budgets. So that's kind of all connected to your points on value and being able to use data to show the impact that you're going to have and like the actual outcome of those dollars in this climate.
And even though like you won't be able to project outcomes, you can kind of infer based off of previous things that you've done, even if it's just posts that you had that weren't sponsored. And if you have had sponsored posts versus regular posts, see what the percentage of engagement is, like the engagement drop is to your regular posts. So like my paid performance is about 20% of normal content engagement, it's 25%. So anything over 15% is considered good. I'm just going to go ahead and let you know, people who get over 15% of their normal content, performance is considered good in the industry. So if you've already met that, like you're doing great. And then again, it's your job as a creator to assure the brand that like, if we are entering a recession, here is what you could still expect from me and my content. Is the industry that you cater to kind of recession proof? I think during the pandemic, I was watching from the sidelines comfortably from my master's program and not relying on creator income to like totally stimulate my day-to-day life. And I was like, is the creator economy going to collapse? And I'm beginning to believe that the creator economy is much more recession proof than any other industry, kind of along with like banking and groceries, just because the way that the consumers have shifted their shopping online, especially in America, we still rely heavily on reviews and input from creators, and brands are seeing the value in that decentralized content creation network that we have created. So those are all really high selling points to keep your job, even if they say they want to cancel, be like, what's your lowest price that you would keep my work going for? And so that we can still have this work moving forward. Because during the pandemic, I had four partners indefinitely postpone work until they figured out what was happening, what was going on. So it was up to me to like stimulate those relationships until they brought them back live, or, talk to them and be like, okay, well, if marketing budgets have changed and everything, would we still be able to work together in a world? Like, what does that look like? What does the price change to, right? Like, I still want to be that partner with you, and I still want to carry that message through. And if we have to change everything that we produce because no one's going out anymore, let me know what it is that I can do to serve you as well. Because these people are scrambling too. Like, they have no idea what's going to happen, and marketing is always the first to get cut in terms of people and budget. So you just have to adapt. Hold on. It's not going to be like they don't think it's going to be a long recession if we actually enter in some sort of recessionary period.
Yeah, but that is such an excellent callback to like, everything's a negotiation. Where can we meet? Just because somebody says, hey, we've got to cut the budget and we're not going to work with you anymore, that doesn't mean you have to like end the conversation there and just say, okay, you can come back to the table and feel empowered to do that. So question in the chat: if you cross post to like say TikTok and Shorts or Reels, are you charging for each post separately, or charging double, or should you just increase your base price a small amount?
I would say it depends on how much work you're putting in on the project to reconfigure that content, right? So you've already produced it once, and what is that cost to reconfigure it to make it work for these other platforms? I know a lot of creators just lump in, like, when I do a blog post, the Instagram post is like my main channel that I'll do it on, but then also you get like Facebook, Pinterest, Twitter, whatever. It's just kind of a catch-all at that point. And so those extra things aren't considered extra work because they can just repost directly from their blog post. But if you were to go from like TikTok to Instagram, maybe the way that you edit the video is different. The music is now different. The storyline gets tweaked a little bit. And so it's now like 1.5 times more work. So that's something that you can keep in consideration, like what percentage of work is it more to cross post it? And then ethically, how good do you feel about that upcharge, right? So it's at the end of the day, like, how good do I feel about this increase in rate? And then ask them, like, look, if you want multi-platform, do you have a budget for cross promotion? Because you have, your base price that you guys have already talked about, whether that was through one platform, but if they want to do more, have they thought about paying more? So put that conversation point back on them and take ownership of that conversation too, because that's how you can squeeze out a few more dollars.
What that makes me think of actually is, what are your thoughts on breaking out a bill and showing the brand, this is why the rate total is what it is. The cultural popular example that we've probably all seen a meme about is like your DoorDash receipt, where you've got like your food and your delivery and your service charge, and it's like all these things go into it, and then all of a sudden your lunch costs $50. But there's a case to be made for creators, you know, letting brands look on the other side of it a little bit. If you had somebody come to your house and do work, you know, you might get a bill for materials, parts, labor, installation, you know, all the different things. And so you're paying taxes and you're spending your time on this. And maybe you have, you know, to pay a subcontractor if you have a videographer or an editor or something. So
Yeah.
should brands be getting a look at that?
100%. Let them know, like bring them into the conversation. So we're releasing an app for our web platform right now, or in the next few weeks, and my co-founder is finishing it. But like one of the things is like we have an itemized breakdown of like your rate card. So like here's the cost of it, like this, here's the cost of this, here's the cost of my props, here's the cost of the content because of all the parameters of the campaign that you guys have entered in the sponsor post calculator. And even when people, I think there's been a lot of transparency around like having bucketed rates, like those people like delineate what it is that they're getting in those buckets, right? So honestly, that just adds to the credibility and the qualifier of why you're charging it is. And it's not just like a random number. You're like $1,500 because of this. And I love breaking it down. I think that really helps with the more data inclined brand marketer who is looking for that assurance that you are a good return on investment.
Let us know, guys, in the chat. Do you send, like, we'll call it an itemized bill, basically? Do you break that out for brands, or are you typically just showing them a flat fee? Would love to see the pulse on that. One more question from the chat recently here. When should a creator invest in marketing rather than doing everything organically?
Marketing what? Like, can you expand on what are you investing marketing in? You want to put paid ad dollars behind your own content, or are you looking to hire marketing help to run your content channel? I would like to a little bit more information on that.
So that was Nick. Nick, if you want to clarify that in the chat, we'll circle back to that. This is a good question. I'd be interested to see real price and rate examples from creators similar to me. Where can I find that information? Said every creator ever who wanted to know like what the industry standards were. I will say that's not a conversation that has been a huge part of the Beacons creator community yet, but it's something that I would love to get to and work on building a space. And I would say it starts with you, right? So if you want to know what somebody else is charging and you're in a creator space like the Beacons community or a chat, share your information and say, this is where I'm at, this is what I'm charging, this is what I'm thinking. Is that aligned? You're gonna have to give a little to get a little, because it can be hard for people to want to jump in and talk about that. So I don't know if you have any other resources, Cynthia.
Yeah, so the way our calculator works is we have spent like 18 months collecting a whole bunch of creator pay data. So anytime you put in something related to your followership in our sponsor post calculator, you're going to see rates that are only related to people who have similar followings to you based off the parameters of the campaign, right? So like we essentially are like a gut check, and you know, if you want to ask a friend, you don't have to go through that awkwardness. You can just use our platform. And then also the free resources like FU Pay Me and Clara for Creators. There's a new service launching by my friend Ayomi, and it's called Canopy for Creators. So it's going to be like a chat room, I guess, or it's like Blind for Creators. If you know about Blind from the corporate world. And yeah, I mean, that's a really great point, Isabel, about, you know, if you want to know what other people are charging, open up the conversation and be like, hey guys, I'm charging this. Like, what do you guys charge if you have similar followers? Great way to take control of that conversation and be nosy without being prying, I guess.
Yeah, so that would be my personal challenge to the person who asked that question. If you're here, or to anybody else who's willing to sort of take up on that lead, is like jump into the Beacons creator space and let us know what you're charging, and let's try to get a conversation going there.
Yes.
So we have had some questions pre-submitted about UGC creators. Are the terms different? Are content licensing in terms different? How do I charge for exclusivity with UGC? And then this question that just got dropped in the chat here about charging for music, and how are you handling pricing with licensed music, specifically in relation to like UGC, where you don't post it and it uses TikTok audio. So let's maybe start with kind of an overview on UGC and if that's different.
Yeah, I mean, I would say if you're producing purely UGC content, that is much more along the pricing schema of like what a commercial photographer and commercial videographer would charge based off of the tools that you're using, right? So if you're using a smartphone, you're not charging someone the same as someone who has like a very expensive like camera setup for whatever videography stuff. If you're purely a UGC creator and someone's asking you for exclusivity, no deal. Like get rid of that, because that's exclusivity for if you're just doing UGC. If they're asking you UGC or exclusivity based off of the campaign itself, just be really careful about how long that exclusivity for. If they're asking you to have complete exclusivity, so like no sponsored posts at all, or if it's niche, or if it's like industry specific. So if it's Whole Foods coming to you, they're like, well, you can't work with, these 5 other retailers. And on the, oh, my internet connection is unstable. Okay, so it just like drop out, just FYI. So if you are in that negotiation phase too, just realize that exclusivity impacts your ability to take on additional work if another brand of that similar nature comes to you too. As far as music licensing goes, that one's interesting because I know a lot of brands who have internal legal departments have a hard time getting the okay to use creator licensed music on platforms because it's not corporate friendly, meaning that they would have to pay royalties to use it. So generally, if it's a brand partnership, I think some of the platforms make you pick like the corporate free music to run it with. So that's just a conversation that you would have to have. And if you're the one producing the music itself, I mean, that's your IP, right? Like suppose your thing takes off. I don't even know if TikTok or whatever pays you if like you have a viral song or something. It's just something to think about. Like if you're composing an original song, that's your original content and you should get paid for it. And if you don't know where to charge, or you don't know where charging, especially as a music composer goes, I don't know how long that takes you. I mean, if you write a jingle in 15 minutes, amazing. You're probably a savant. If it takes you, a day and a half, like you have to take that cost into consideration, because someone's going to hear a 15-second jingle, but you have spent an hour or a day and a half composing it. So those are all things that you need to think about, the time that goes into it versus the reward and the payment of it.
Yeah, absolutely. If anybody who's still on has other questions about UGC, feel free to drop those in the chat. Here's a question that just got dropped in. Have you collaborated with any workflow management tools you really like? I've worked on the brand side, and it was a struggle to cater deals and partnerships to each creator, rather than doing a one-size-fits-all campaign where all partners were under the exact same terms.
I normally from a marketplace setting, like you join like a Whaler or whoever else facilitates the deals, there's no real wiggle room and everything has to get submitted through their platform. I know when brands run campaigns themselves, they'll typically use different project management tools. I found that sometimes everyone just gives up at the end and we're all using Google Docs. And so I have never really seen or had a sticky experience on the project management side where both parties are really happy with how the content flows through. I think I've probably used every tool out there, but I will say marketplaces, because the content has to be submitted in certain boxes within the parameters of the campaign, or is the only time where I've seen similar campaigns kick off with creators where they don't have to do multifaceted campaign adjustments for each creator. Otherwise, I think when there is that fine tune, the parameters that have been fine tuned to each creator, and everyone ends up just using Google Docs.
And I don't know if this is an exact answer to Morgan, who asked this question, but we are at Beacons launching a Beacons for Managers tool, which I am really not as familiar with as I should be to speak on. But if you want to kind of investigate that or look into that, we can certainly connect afterwards. Cool. We are kind of closing in on our last 10 to 15 minutes here. So please feel free to drop any of your questions in the chat. If there's anything you want to make sure that we answer live, we will prioritize those. But one other question from the pre-submitted questions that I wanted to get to was the whitelisting question that was submitted. Just what is whitelisting? What are considerations to take into account for pricing? That's something that tends to confuse people as to how it works and what they should be charging for it.
Yeah, I feel like whitelisting has gotten this kind of flip-flop on how people view it. So, I mean, 4 years ago, I used to offer whitelisting. Like I would do a little bit of paid ad boosting behind my ads as like an incentive for brands to upcharge the content with me, just because I knew I could run the ad cheap and make more money on just like facilitating that ad exchange. Whereas now, so you have like two like problems with whitelisting. You have two problems and opportunities with whitelisting, right? So like the opportunity is like your face or what your content gets everywhere because you're running a digital ad, and now like you're all in this niche and you're showing that you're working with brands, which is great because brands love to see FOMO and that you're working with other people too. Which another call out, don't delete your sponsored posts from your feed, guys. Like leave it up because brands love to see that you're working with people. And even if it's a flop, at least you got paid to have that flop, right? Like leave it up and let them know that you're still working on brand campaigns. Two, if your face is everywhere, sometimes a brand is gonna be like, oh, well, she's working with someone, like, I don't know if I want to like work with her right now, or maybe she's off limits. So you get this like double-edged sword with whitelisting. And the school of thought is very, very cut down the middle between people who love it and people who hate it. So it's a personal philosophy thing. I don't personally let ads run with my face in it just because I think it's weird, and I have like my own personal privacy issues where I don't want to be all over everyone's whatever screens with my face. And then other times it's just I'm like, oh, well, sure, like here's a tablescape that I did, here's the interior of my house, like there's nothing very descriptive about it, and I will let you go run an ad for it, whatever. And like sometimes if we come, like if our campaign goes too long, I'll even like gift extra whitelisting to just like give it a little incentive to say like, hey, here, the price that you paid me was justifiable, and here's like an extra free gift of whitelisting for another month next year or something. So I actually use that as a negotiation tactic to help upsell some of my content too.
Yeah, amazing. I think one of the themes I'm hearing across some of your answers is like responsiveness, flexibility, adaptability, like so much of pricing and, charging, negotiating contracts, working with brands. It really is about paying attention, being clued in, being aware of your stats and your data, and like looking for opportunities to come back to the table or make an offer to continue the relationship.
Yeah.
So we had a question in the chat: what industries usually pay the most for brand deals?
What we've noticed is, well, so it shifts, right? So like during the pandemic, it was like home decor explosion. Everyone was at home, every kind of home thing was very high in demand. Technology and automotive tend to also pay a little bit more. These are pretty lowly saturated, I would say, from like an overall creator perspective. So they get that little boost because it is a little bit more unique. And also the expense of the product itself kind of goes into the cost of the campaign, the final cost of the campaign that they can pay. And then it really depends on, is this brand entering your market? So what does that look like? I'm an Atlanta creator, but this brand is from LA and they're finally making their shift over to the East Coast. So like I have authority in the East Coast, whereas they don't. And now I can charge more, right? So there's all these opportunities to notice like why they're selecting me. Always ask a brand, how did you find me? What were you interested in? Like if you've already opened that conversation, it's not going to be too much of a burden for negotiating. Get a little bit more detail on like why it was that they were interested in. They might have it in their initial outreach email where they're like, we are coming from the West Coast and we want to partner with East Coast creators because of XYZ reasons. And you're like, great, but how exactly did you guys find me? Oh, you found me from Instagram or something? Cool. Like, they're like, we were just searching Atlanta bloggers. Like, get those details so that you can at least replicate that for future opportunities. And also you can add that as like a credibility booster for you when you go to communicate other campaign opportunities for people too. So even if you are like a small fish, you can still be a big fish in this brand's eyes. Just have to figure out how to communicate it and have the right conversation pieces in place.
For sure. We have a couple of great questions here in the chat to close with. Aside from price, what analytics do companies tend to look at the most to see if the price is worth it? How much should, or do you think each analytic, like the engagement rate, the followers, affect the price? I think that question is kind of like, which one of those, is the most important factor?
Every brand campaign is so different. I would say I wish I had a more in every scenario, there's always the right answer, and the wrong answer for this world. So I would say, as far as they're looking at analytics, most of them are probably taking your content, if they're not running you through some sort of platform where it aggregates it all for them, into an Excel spreadsheet. So again, if you want to be more hireable, being that creator who sends over their screenshots on time, and sends over other qualitative things and other like markers of how the campaign performed, you're doing better than 90% of the other creators, because a lot of people don't follow up. And that's another reason why most people say like, well, I tried influencer marketing, it didn't work for our brand. And it's like, okay, well, because you also had bad brand partners who wouldn't help you. Yeah. So, analytics companies, they use a variety of things, but at the end of the day, everything gets compiled into an Excel spreadsheet. If you as a creator want to find a resource, there's a tool out there called Influence Kit that I really like. You get one free report per month and it sends it right over to your brand partner. It aggregates everything from the campaign. It's great. I use it all the time. It's super professional. So there's a shameless plug for them.
Awesome. You mentioned about whether you don't show your face in whitelisted videos. Question was, do you discuss in advance whether or not your face is going to be in the video? I recently saw a creator post who mentioned the brand they worked with was upset that her face was not in the sponsored video. Should you address that ahead of time when discussing deliverables?
Absolutely. Every time someone says they want to whitelist my content, I'm like, okay, especially sometimes they're like, we want you and your husband. And I'm like, first of all, my husband doesn't like to be in any of my content. Like most people don't know I'm married. And second of all, like, I don't want my face in it. So I discuss that up front. I'm like, okay, great. Like if I'm in it, I don't want my face to be full on, like you can get like a side partial view with my hair. It's just not how I operate. And so we discussed that before. And if anyone gets upset, it's because they had unrealistic expectations that were not met.
More transparency, more clarity, more discussion is always better, to be upfront about things with the brand.
Over communicate as briefly as possible as you can. Write out your 12 paragraph thing, run it through ChatGPT and be like, give me 5 sentences of this. And you'll be
that.
Yeah.
I love that. I had a brand ask if they could PayPal me and they wanted me to use that money to buy their product on Amazon.
I hate that. It's so scammy.
Is this a scam? They had a ton of influencer photos, but it felt scammy. Yeah, I think she says, I said no. Trust your gut, right? Like if it feels scammy to you, there's other work out there.
It's, first of all, it's so wrong. So here's essentially what they get to write that refund off. Like you're now having to deal with all the coordination of shipping and everything. A lot of people who I've talked to who had, because I got approached by this a long time ago and I was like, it just feels wrong. Why are you asking me to pay up front and then you'll reimburse me through PayPal? It just also kind of like brings to mind, like, is this money laundering? Like, am I somehow helping in some weird money laundering scheme? I don't know. I don't agree with that. I don't think you as a creator should never pay up front for something. The brand should be paying for that up front. That is not good brand practice to ask the creator to pay up front. If they ask you to pay whitelisting up front when it's in your contract or anything, and they're like, we'll reimburse you. And it's like, well, when you reimburse me, you're going to reimburse me on my 1099 and now taxable income. That hurts you twice. You have to front that money and now you have to pay taxes on it. Whereas they don't. So yeah, I don't like that practice. I think it's really bad and really shady and super scammy.
Yeah, trust your instincts on those kinds of things. There's a piece of the creator economy pie for everybody. So like you don't ever feel like the work in front of you, if it doesn't feel right, is the only thing that's going to be available. There's other brands and you will find a better fit. You don't have to say yes to everything, even as a beginner. Yeah, this is a similar question. If a brand wants you to promote their product or service, are they supposed to send it to you, or do you have to purchase it yourself? Yes, this does also.
Yes, they should send it to you. Also, I just did an article with the Wall Street Journal. Anything that they send you that you put on social media technically counts as taxable income. So how much do you want that product? Technically, you're supposed to report that as taxable income. So just keep that in mind as people send you products and gift cards and shop cards that you're supposed to report it to the IRS, because they're writing it off on their end. They're like, oh, we sent out, $400 in influencer gifts this month, but you get to report that as income. I don't think it's fair. It's just the way the world works right now.
Yeah. Okay. So I think we've addressed all the questions in the chat. There was a question, do you have a favorite payment method when accepting payment for brand deals? And I plugged Beacon's Invoices. Somebody said I've used Lumanu and I like it. I will say I actually used to be a Lumanu user personally, but they just sunsetted their product where they're servicing any client and not just, now they only work with clients who are brand partners with Lumanu. And so Beacons is here to fill that gap.
Yeah, I was gonna say like ACH and wires. Otherwise, like I don't want a fee, so like don't send it to me through PayPal. Send me a check in the mail. Like I'll take the 3 extra days that it takes to get to me.
Yeah. And we're right at time, but we'll close with one final question, which is an appropriate ending question, which is how do I close the deal? So if I'm, I've been in negotiations and the conversation is ongoing and I'd like to say like, yes, let's do this, how do we close the deal?
Yeah, right before you hit that final price marker or whatever, just have like two of your previously talked about credibility, like buffer markers that you've talked about in the conversation before, whether it's like audience or like how excited you are because you're a longstanding fan or whatever, then do your final sale. So like now they're primed and boosted to think about like, oh yeah, she is a really good investment or he is a really good investment. And they're gonna be like, duh, obviously this is a great sale. So just put, one more great sell on your services right before you send over that final price.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for your time and your expertise today, Cynthia. This was amazing to have you. And thank you all so much to those of you who have been here for this entire hour with us, hanging in and listening. So quick points of closure and follow up here. Let's continue this conversation. Please come into the Beacons community and let's chat and continue to talk pricing. If you're already a Beacons user, you can find the community through your profile at the bottom left. You click on your name and then you go to community. If you need to fill out a community application, just make sure you let me know you were here today and I'll get you approved. If you're not already a Beacons user, you can become one and join the community. Be sure to check out #PayMe and their pricing tool and all of the amazing resources and events that they offer. Cynthia, I know you have some more events coming up soon. So for more information, we would love to, sign up for Cynthia's emails. I would like to say are stunning. We absolutely love them. And everybody at Beacons is always like, this is the most beautiful, amazing email. So if we could ever poach you over to Beacons email marketing, let us know because we would love to have you, but you should sign up for Cynthia's emails regardless.
Thank you so much. I love being here with you guys this morning, this afternoon. Thank you for joining. And please let me know if you have any other questions. Find us on Instagram, drop in my DMs, whatever. I'm here for you guys.
Stay tuned for the recording and follow-up content from this. We will be sure to share that and have a fabulous rest of your day, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.